Hi, and welcome to episode 10 of Starting Nowhere. I'm your host, Brandon. Today, my guest is my friend, UFC fighter Billy Quarantillo. We talk about the path he took to get to the UFC, including some of the trials and tribulations he went through on the way. We also talk about what it's been like since he's actually been in the UFC in this weird pandemic world. Make sure you check out Billy's fight this upcoming Saturday, December 12th, as he squares off against Gavin Tucker. Please enjoy today's episode. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining me today, Billy Q. Why don't you go ahead and tell the people a little about yourself? Because I've known you for like a decade now, so I know everything there is to know.
Yep, you know everything. And thanks for having me, by the way, to start things off. I appreciate that. Yeah, so my name's Billy Quarantello. I live in Tampa, Florida. We've known each other probably at least 10 years about. I one of the first people I met when I moved from Buffalo to Tampa. I've been basically chasing the goal of being a UFC World Champion. I'm in the UFC right now, 3-0 in my first three fights. So things are probably the best they've ever been for me in terms of career wise. And I'm getting married in March. I got my dog and my cat hanging out over here. So I got my little growing family, and you could say. And yeah, man, life is good. And yeah, let's get this thing started.
Absolutely, man. So I want to start with talking about the growing family and stuff like that because I was thinking about it earlier today. I remember when you and Bree when you first started bringing Bree around and everything like that, and there's always that moment when your friend, male or female, is dating somebody new, and you're like, "Oh man, I hope they don't suck," because I really don't want to hang out with somebody who sucks. And I remember, man, since the first time I met her, Bree is a sweetheart, man. She is like an absolute wonderful person. So I'm really happy for you too. Hopefully, obviously, things will be a lot smoother in March when the wedding goes down, so you can
Yes.
get a little wild and crazy like you like to.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm pretty much starting a training camp now, but in March I'm planning on taking off like the first couple months of next year, depending how things go and next. But yeah, she's a sweetheart. She's perfect for me, and I always kind of thought I was on this path to the UFC and a world championship and stuff like that, and I always kind of thought I could. I always thought I was going to end up doing it by myself, just came out to Florida, didn't really have the aspirations of finding a wife right away, having kids and all
Mhm.
that. But you meet the right person, and she's been with me since I was 1-0
Mhm.
as a professional fighter. Now I'm 15-2 in the UFC, actually making real money now. So it's just been a wild ride with her, and she's pretty much been there my whole professional career. So it's really cool, and we're excited to tie the knot and to keep seeing where I could take this wild UFC ride.
Absolutely, man, and it's really important to have a partner who supports you like that too, because it's already difficult enough to date or marry anybody, particularly somebody like us. But then you add in the fighter life. Oh man, it's nuts. So congratulations again on all that, man. But let's dive into a couple of things here because it's really weird. Like, dude, I've been watching you fight since like 2011 or something like that. I don't remember exactly. And I've seen you fight in Ocala. I've seen you fight in random places. Saw you fight the dude in the Michael Myers mask, like all the
Uh
nonsense
huh.
that comes with being like an amateur MMA fighter. But the craziest thing is, after all these years of putting my dues in and watching you fight, I still haven't made it to a UFC fight. One of them was my fault. Two of them are due to COVID. So, and
Yeah.
now you're 3-0. So it's kind of like, circumstance, not sorry, not circumstance, supernatural or whatever, where I feel like superstition. That's it.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
Where I feel like
You
I
got it.
can't go see you fight live because you're doing such so good. I'm like, I can't go fuck it up, man. I don't want to be the guy who messes this up.
I know, that's funny. I know, man. And that was obviously the reason why I'm like, hell yeah, I'll do your podcast, whatever. Any of my friends that came to the Ocala fights, to watch me in Frivola and all those guys, and you've had your fights too in little tiny ass dungeon gyms.
Hmm.
Anyone who I've known from those days, I'm gonna help you out and do your show, or because of that, because who knows that we would have been able to take it this far. And yeah, it's kind of funny that the main shows that you've gone to were like amateur redneck shows, and now we finally make it to the big leagues, and we're fighting in front of less people in the UFC. Less people actually there,
Hmm.
but now it's a quick a speedway through to this technology world that we live in. I got my little like studio I'm putting up. I see you doing your thing. It's a lot more of it's becoming digital.
Yeah, man, and I'm thankful for that stuff too because, as you know, I was military back in the day, and so my first deployment, not so much my last one, but my first deployment back in '08, and when this technology wasn't as widespread, it's way different world when you're trying to like write letters to people and stuff like that, maybe get them on a phone call and stuff. You're like, it's wild, man. So this is way different, way better, and I'm terrible at keeping in touch with people. So since I've moved here to Miami, you and I probably have spoken only like a handful of times in passing, or me talking shit on one of your Facebook
Yeah.
posts or something like that. But that's about it.
Yeah,
So
that's yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's that's kind of life too. There's people, especially how Tampa is. People come and
mhm,
go through here the most. The more
yeah.
than I've ever seen, and so it's always great catching up to people, and doing something like this is just a great way to kind of connect with people again. And yeah, you made a good point, man. These kids now are spoiled with being able
Yeah.
to do all this stuff. Like back in the day, I definitely remember writing letters in my school and stuff like that, and not having the things that they have now. So it's all good
Yeah, man.
though.
So I gotta say, man, you're at that level of fame. This has happened. I've watched this happen now like two or three different times in your fighting career, and it always annoys me when it starts happening. I'm always happy for you, but it's really annoying for somebody like me. But I want to be selfish, is because when you first start as an amateur, you're on the early part of the card. So we go in, we watch you, we go home, we go party and everything like that. It's like 8 p.m. We're out drinking already. It's great. You know what I mean? And then you did that same thing when you're pro. You start off again at the beginning of the cards and everything. We go out, we party, we get done early, and now in the UFC, you started again, but now you're starting to get some recognition, especially with that last knockout you had. And now you're starting to push later and later, and you're starting to cut into my sleep again. And it's like I've watched this, I've watched it happen three different times. But tell me, how has it been, man? Just grinding out through all those different stages of that career. And the one thing that I really wanted to know is, did you prefer coming in through the Contender Series, or would you have liked to get in right after the Ultimate Fighter?
Yeah, so yeah, it's definitely been a journey. I'm definitely used to being one of the first couple fights of the night, or being in the later card. And actually, these fights, these last two fights during the pandemic were both in Vegas. Same with the Contender Series, so they were actually in like what seemed like the middle of the day. We went over there at like 4 p.m.
Mm,
because so like uh it was funny. It's something I won't forget right after going like having this war with Kyle Nelson and like violently like punching him and knocking him out, like one of the hardest I've ever hit anyone, maybe him and Kama Worthy. um
mhm,
Having this violent fight and like doing like all this big media scrum after, and then you walk outside and we get into like our limo that the UFC like gave us for like the ride, and it's me, Arroyo, Rawlings, and my brother, and we just sitting there and like we're just all looking at each other like, dude, that was just wild what just happened, and it's like sunny out. It's like the
yeah.
middle of the night. So, yeah, it's definitely it's cool to get that recognition to be later in the cards. Sorry for cutting into your sleep time. Um, the question about the Contender Series or the Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah.
I think when it happened, when I lost, got beat up on the Ultimate Fighter, Saul Rogers took me out. Um, I thought at the time that I was ready, and that I was like, or that I didn't necessarily know if I was ready, but I saw other people on the show getting their chance to fight in the finale.
Hmm.
And I was looking at that like, oh, I'm better than these guys. Like, this is ridiculous. Like in my head, I'm like, I should be fighting. I should do this. I should do that. But what I did from that, I basically went back to the drawing board, and I had to, I knew I had to put the work in because they didn't see what I saw. I knew I had to put a lot more work in. So I basically just worked my ass off, used that as motivation. I kept saying, I'm like, I'm going to get signed 2016, 2017 is going to be my year. And then, I tore my ACL and all this stuff happened.
Hmm.
So after all I went through and winning on the Contender Series and being in the UFC now, knowing how much better I am now, I'm glad I didn't get signed then, because now I'm already in the UFC and I can already make that run. I know I
Hmm.
can already fight. I think I'm like 40th in the world or something, and there's like 20 guys above me that I know I'm either gonna whoop or give a really tough fight to. And then there's
Hmm.
the rest of the guys where I kind of think that too, where I know I can compete with them. Where when I was in the Ultimate Fighter, I think I was 25, 26. I wouldn't have been ready to beat everyone I have to beat. You know what I mean? Because a lot of
Yeah.
times the UFC, once you sign with the UFC, you're getting thrown right to the wolves.
Oh yeah.
You don't have any. There's no more like easy fights or good matchup fights. So I'm happy that I didn't get in then, would I have liked to have won the whole show and gotten signed and gotten some like easier fights? Of course, that would have been great. But the way it happened, I'm closer to my peak right now or closer to my prime now than back then. Like back then, I probably would have lost one of my first couple fights. Probably would have got what happened against Saul in the UFC.
Hmm.
And now I needed that maturity. A couple more big regional main events. And also getting more fans. Fans seeing me on there, then seeing me bounce back and winning fights on in Fort Lauderdale and in Western New York and stuff like that. So it
Hmm.
kind of helped in that point too. But really, just how much I grew from that because if you think of it, I was 6-1. My record was 6-1 when I got on the Ultimate Fighter, and it was about 5 years ago now, and now I'm 15-2. So I've literally doubled my record. And even a couple fights ago when I fought to get in the UFC, it was still pretty much double the amount of professional fights that I've had. So I've
Hmm.
just come such a long way. And being around all these other guys that, like Uriah Faber and Conor McGregor and Chad Mendez and just so many guys that were already there. Um, Getting that and having that experience now, I'm in the UFC at the right time right now.
Yeah, man. I think one of the things that you said there that I think is what a lot of people need to learn is, well, really two things. One, you may not get to where you're going by the path you thought you were, so keep going. And then two, like you said, I'm going to be in the UFC 2016. Well, okay, now 17, now 18. It didn't matter. You just kept going after it because you knew you still wanted it, not just letting one setback being like, that's it, I'm out. I don't want to do this anymore. You know what I'm saying? So you kept running into that wall until you ran through it. So I think that's a lot of stuff that people need to learn for themselves and keep pushing themselves. But also, some people ain't made for it. Sometimes that'll tell you if you're not ready for the grind, if you're not ready for the
Yeah.
process, then maybe you should look at other goals.
That is it's a hard way for me too because I've coached our amateur fight team for years now. We've had
Hmm.
3 very successful years that I've coached. This year we're 11-2 right now. And the 2 losses were against legit guys.
Hmm.
But just coaching them and motivating them and giving them kind of what we just talked about, how like you got to have that drive and that determination and motivation. But some people just aren't made to do certain things. I kind of you can see it sometimes.
Hmm.
I remember when me and Matt Frivola, trained with a bunch of guys starting off, and we weren't like it was weird because it's weird to think about now because when we started off, we didn't know like the techniques or
Hmm.
like knew what like MMA was or like we had very low fighter IQs.
Hmm.
But when we would spar with each other and spar with other people, we could tell we had something different, and some people
Hmm.
have that, like when I've sparred with you certain times, it's like, whoa, like he's legit or like he really wants it this day or that day or whatever. And we would
Hmm.
go with certain people and we would kind of call out certain people and be like, oh, he's not really, we would say like, oh, he's not really like a fighter. Like he's not a
Hmm.
fighter. And what that means is it doesn't mean like they're not tough, but it just means like they're not going to go through it every single day, day in, day out, 6 days a week
Hmm.
for 10 years straight, every single day, 2 hours a day, recovering at the right time, getting enough sleep, eating the right foods, being able to take those injuries, training with them, cut the weight. There's a lot to that you need. It's a certain type of person that needs to do all those things.
Hmm.
And if you're not that, it doesn't even matter. Like the technique part doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
You could do the technique all day long, but if you go and get drilled, punched in the face, and you want to go home and you can't come back the next day, because in this sport, man, you just take a beating,
Yeah.
beating after beating after beating after beating, and you know, and some people you almost don't even want to put them on that path. I see some fighters where I'm like, oh man, I want to be a fighter, but they're only training a couple days a week, and they don't want to come to jujitsu technique because it's
Hmm.
boring, and it's like, well, you're gonna be a white belt then, and who are you gonna beat? Like maybe, and it gets even worse when they get an easy fight. They beat someone
Yep.
with no training. That's the worst fighter to deal with when he doesn't put the work in, or he or she or whoever, they don't put the work in, and then they go and get an easy fight and they win it, and next thing you know, they think they're God's green gift to earth or whatever,
Yeah.
and and they're not, and
Yeah.
they haven't put the work in, and then they end up, the inevitable happens. They end up fighting someone who is about it, and they take them out.
Well, and that's the thing, man. I know exactly what you're talking about because that was, from my own perspective, that was me. Like I loved it. I'm a hobbyist though. I never knew I wanted this as a career. I never wanted the day in and day out type stuff. I just liked learning martial arts. I've watched martial arts movies since I was a kid and everything like that. And I like the camaraderie and the people that we were there with. So you know what I mean? Like on my path shows exactly what hard work would get you because you and I started around the same time. You were a little bit more experienced than I was, so was Frivola and everything like that. But we weren't so
Yeah,
far apart that like it was a world apart or anything like that. So if I would have done what you did, we'd be still relatively about that same distance apart in skill level
absolutely,
and everything like that. But it
absolutely.
was for me, and I just liked it as a hobby. I wanted to do it a couple times a week, want to get a sweat in, wanted to up my skills of actually being able to fight and everything. And it shows. You know what I mean? Where I am today and where you are today shows that difference that hard work can get you because we started relatively. You were way better wrestler, way better grappler, and I was about equal with you, I think, as a striker or whatever. But now I can't touch
Yeah.
you in any area of any kind of fighting. You know what I'm saying? And that's because of the work you put in and dedication you had to the craft. No matter what else came from it. And so I know what you're talking about. And like I said, when we get offline, maybe we can talk about some names specifically. But there's a
Mhm.
couple of them that pop up as well. And I remember those guys, especially because I used to assistant coach for you for a while there
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah. You helped me out
intro
for
to
a long
striking.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
and
was
then we'd
it
have
was
those
an
guys.
amazing class. I
We'd have
still
those
run the
guys
one
come in,
class.
man.
Yeah, oh yeah, we would. Yep, that class was, yeah, a breeding ground for it. Of
Mhm.
South Tampa, douchebags, whatever you want to call them. And I was a part of that. Everyone went through their South Tampa, wild sprees in our early 20s. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was yeah, no, and n- there's no one saying like what I did was the right thing or what you did was the right thing.
Mhm.
It's all about everyone's individual journey, because who knows, like it's not like anything, the risk that I put into doing this
Yeah.
has been worth it for me, because like you said, it's for me, it was always just a hobby, but then I always just wanted, I'm like, I want to make this like what I could do, like as like my main platform.
Mhm.
So like my art, or like what someone's podcast might be, or what a model's pictures might be.
Yeah.
My biggest platform, I wanted it to be that martial arts. I wanted it to be, I wanted people to see my jujitsu and my Muay Thai, and how hard I can train, and how good someone can get at fighting if they just dedicate themselves to it, and have like the right mindset.
Absolutely, man. And like I said, I'm all props to you. And I'm not ashamed of anything I do. I make the choices to
Absolutely.
do or not do whatever it is that I'm doing. You know what I'm saying? It's really cool to see those people because now there's three guys from that old group. You know, yourself, obviously, Matt Frivola, and Alon.
Yep.
Also, and Alon went viral too with that
Yeah.
flying knee knockout. Man, I shared it with him too because like even Business Insider, I'm like Business Insider has nothing to do with fighting, and they're like sharing that crazy knockout and everything. And I'm like, I loved it. But the way that you and Alon both got into the UFC through the contender, and well, for Vola too through the contender series, but
Mhm.
particularly the way that you and Alon did it to me was the most viral because obviously you have Alon with the flying knee knockout, and then you just beating the dude into submission. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Like where you're walking him down, just you weren't
Yeah.
saying this, but your actions were. You were basically calling him, "Come on, man, stop being a punk.
Yeah.
Let's fight. Let's actually go." And then
Yeah.
what was it Herb Dean? I think ref that fight. I can't
Yeah.
remember. And
Yep.
he's eventually like, "Nah, man, he's done. He's done."
Herb Dean. Stop the fight, Herb.
Yeah.
Herb's watching it. No, that'll always be, yeah, I'll always look back on that. It'll be special.
Mhm.
Because, Alon was, one of the first guys I trained with. He was Alon. So I don't know how many people know this story, but when I first moved from Buffalo to Tampa, Matt Fervola was visiting the same week, and we both decided
Mhm.
to train at GTS. I heard about it through my sister back in the day. She knew Matt Arroyo and Paul from
Mhm.
UT. So I come down. Matt comes down the same time. So we basically joined pretty much the same day, and Alon Cruz was there. He was like the one of like the main fighters there. So we all just kind of hit it off, became boys, trained together for a couple of years consistently. And but back then none of us knew anything. Like we all
Mhm.
wanted to be in the UFC, and that was like our goal and our dream to be in the UFC. And yeah, basically I got on the Ultimate Fighter first, didn't get in. Then Matt Frivola got on the Contender Series and he got in the UFC.
Hmm.
And then back to back weeks, I got my TKO finish to get in, and 1 week later, Alon gets a viral knockout like finish to literally get in the UFC. And basically at that point, we're all in it, all in the UFC, all within pretty much like I think like a year and a half span, maybe 2 years, maybe Frivola 2 years earlier, but pretty
Yeah.
close, maybe a year and a half before. So a year and a half span of people that have been training together for, or have trained with each other, have known each other for 10 years. It's pretty wild to think.
Yeah, but I love it too, man, because it shows that first of all how talented that group was and is, I should say,
Hmm.
but also just how dedication can get you guys there, and you all kind of got there back to back, and it really put I think Tampa MMA scene on the map, and now a lot more people might be looking there, especially the GTS, because we know Master Matt Arroyo, that is for everybody else, is incredible. He's an incredible instructor, incredible human being in general, and so we knew that working there and day in and day out, and especially somebody like myself who I've trained in the Middle East. I've trained a lot of different places, whatever, just through when I was traveling and stuff. And there's no place like GTS, man. Period.
Yeah, it's it's my second home. I go there. I got a key to the gym. I go there a couple times a day. Sometimes 3, 4 times a day. Um, and yeah, what Matt's been able to do, he basically told us from day one. He's like, I was just in the UFC. I know how to get you guys there. He knows everyone in the UFC at all the different levels, at the top to the bottom.
Hmm.
And now he's like, if you stay here, if you train with me, if you listen to me and do this. And not only that, I'm the mentor side of, he's recommended books to me that I've read that I'm like, this is like so much knowledge and information that it has helped me. um and he's my manager now, and we're in the UFC now, and I'm happy to write him manager checks. He earns them and he gets them. We're both doing what we said we wanted to do, and I'm happy that I've stuck with him the whole way, and he's stuck with me. And even though we do fight sometimes, like how
Yeah.
we are,
Yeah.
we fight all the time. And especially like doing like jujitsu rolls and stuff like that. We try to kill each other sometimes, but it is like a big brother rivalry, like a sibling
Hmm.
rivalry. But he's built this huge beautiful gym. Like every night I teach a class and there's like 30, 40 people there in the middle of a pandemic. Like
Hmm.
he obviously is doing something right. He's done the right things to train, like all of his coaches, all of his students. Like a lot of people go there and try to like basically mimic what he's done, and all the
Hmm.
other fighters, and it's built like this huge like army of people that know how to choke each other and kill each other. Like
Yeah.
literally a bunch of fighters,
Yeah.
and a lot of military, there's a lot of military people, police officers, people on all different sides of the spectrum, coming together and basically learning how to defend themselves, learning how to fight, learning how to interact with people, moving. And a lot of people are, um, you know, they're going to be good UFC fighters. There's going to be
Mhm.
another wave of UFC fighters in like 5 years, and maybe within the next couple of years. I really think that, like, I got some guys that are coming up that um, are going to carry the torch really well.
Yeah, man, I love it. And just make sure that we gotta do whatever we can to make sure Bruce Buffer gets the right card, so we don't have a lot of.
I,
I know it wasn't Bruce's fault. I want to
dude,
be clear. I know it wasn't his fault, but still
I
hilarious. But
know. I know, dude. So you know what happened? He
yeah.
got the wrong card, I guess, and he was like, I'm getting amped up. I'm looking over at Kyle Nelson, and then Bruce is talking to me, and I'm thinking what every fighter thinks. Every fighter thinks this when Bruce Buffer's announcing. You're like, should I look at him? And I'm like, should I fist bump him? And
Mhm.
I didn't fist bump him. I didn't fist bump him my UFC debut in DC, because Fervola told me that there's a Bruce Buffer curse where, like, if
Uh,
you fist bump Bruce Buffer, you're gonna lose,
mhm.
right? So I don't fist bump him, and I'm like, okay, I'm not fist bumping. And he comes over and he gets everything right. Billy Quarantillo, I appreciate it, Bruce. He said my name the right way. Go out there and beat Jacob Kilborn in DC. Like, my whole family's there. Just an amazing debut. Talked to him after. I was like, hey man, I'm like, Bruce, you're a legend. I couldn't fist bump you though because like the curse. And he looks at me. He's like, hey man. He's like, do you know how many winners there are? He's like I've heard of the curse, but he's like, there's a lot more winners than losers. And he gives me that look like, And I'm like, "Oh, man." I'm like, "That's so cool." I'm like, "All right, Bruce, I get you next time." So, the next time I fight the Alpha Ginger. It was, Richie Martinez, I think his name is. Richie Martinez. He does a great job too.
Mhm.
He's the old, I think WEC old WEC guy. He
Yeah,
does a
yeah.
really good job. He hit my name perfectly. Billy Quarantillo. Um, so then this time Bruce comes up again, and I'm like, hell yeah, it's Bruce Buffer. He's the man. So I'm getting pumped up, ready to fight, and he's like Billy Corn, or he's like, before he said my name, he was like, and my record at the time is 14-2, and he's like 14 wins and 8 losses,
Yeah.
and I just
Like,
look at
what?
him, I'm like, and I'm like moving, I'm like, and I look at him, I'm like, two, Bruce, and he looked at me, and he's like, I'm reading, like he basically saying like I just have to read this, and then he goes, and then fighting out of Chicago, Illinois, and I'm like literally trying to fight, and he's like, give like naming all these places. I've never even been to Chicago before,
Mhm,
and I'm like, oh man. And then Arroyo was, made a good point. He's like, it doesn't matter, dude. It doesn't
mhm,
matter. And I thought about that same thing. I'm like, I always have to have that same attitude, whether it's fighting on ESPN with Bruce Buffer, or I'm about to fight someone, like in a play at a playground, or like in high school
mhm.
or something, like at like a party or something. It doesn't matter what they say before. It's just, you just got to defend yourself and, land your shots.
Well, and that's the thing, man. It's funny because watching all those fights over those years that I did, I've heard so many different ways to pronounce your last name,
I know.
and so that's usually where they go wrong. And he got that right, but then
Yeah,
like your
it's
record and everything else, I'm like,
the easy stuff.
yeah,
He messed up on the easy stuff, and he got Billy. They get Billy Quarantello right,
mm,
uh, every time. The bad ones that I don't like are just when they say Billy Quarantillo, because
yeah,
then it basically sounds like you're just skipping out on the ILL, and TO. So you can't do
yeah,
that. So it's either got to be Quarantillo, or a lot of people with like Italian accents like Quarantello, with like
yeah, yeah,
Corntello, like that rhymes with like Jello.
yeah.
That's what Laura Sanko said. She's like Corntello, Jello, like she gets it.
So I wanted to talk about that second fight too. Well, all your fights really, but it's funny to me because you are probably one of the worst fighters in the entirety of the UFC to fight on short notice. You know what I mean?
Oh
It's like
yeah.
no, no, no,
Okay.
no. Like
I didn't
no.
know where you're going. I was like,
Yeah, you're terrible. I fucking hate you. No, no,
I
but
like
like
that.
seriously, your debut fight, the guy fights you on like short notice. I'm like, dude, Billy's not the guy to fight on short notice. Like nobody is really, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
like you, especially in your fight style and your cardio, you're the one dude I've seen more than anybody who uses his cardio as a weapon. And I'm like, this
Mhm.
dude, there's no way. Like no matter how good
Yeah.
this guy is, and props to him. He took the fight, he took the beating like a man and everything. But I hope he gets another chance at some point. But no, you can't fight Billy Q on short notice, and that was. Jesus, dude, that was a hell of a way to
Yeah.
make your debut.
And that just I was kind of thinking the same thing, and I kind of, I do feel like I wish he did get a whole camp.
Mhm,
He would have done, a little bit better. I still think I would have implemented my game plan. But I was thinking the same thing, and I was thinking that's the difference between the UFC and like a different promotion, because if another promotion calls you, and they're offering you like 1-1, like
mhm,
a thousand, you're not fighting Billy Corntello on short notice. Like, not to brag, but like,
yeah,
why would you want to? I wouldn't do that. Like, I wouldn't fight someone who's that level for like a couple grand. But when the UFC calls, it's hard to say no. And I knew what he was thinking. He's probably just like, I'm just gonna try to throw some bombs. He was a heavy knockout striker. His
mhm,
last two fights he had like knockouts on the feet, and I was in a point where I'm like, I don't need a highlight reel knockout yet.
mhm,
What I need right now is a dominant win, and I'm
yeah,
like, how I'm gonna do that is I'm just gonna grapple you and make you, wear you down, grapple you, and just drag you into deep waters. And that's what I was able to do, and it was great debut.
yeah, absolutely. And then you go on, as you say, to fight the Alpha Ginger, who I don't know what it is with this dude. This is two fights now, two Tampa fighters as well. Just has a magnet to the back of dudes' heads, and nobody will say anything about it in the cage. And again, I know refing is a very hard job, so I'm not trying to talk badly
Mhm.
about them, but how many hits to the back of the head does it take before they say this guy does this? And even though they knew he had done it in the fight previously to Alon, and,
Yeah.
and I watch your fight, and you go and I think you shoot a double or something like that, and same thing. He starts just blasting back of the headshots.
Yeah, well, yeah, he came out and it was funny. We talked to the ref, the ref Mark Smith. He usually does do a pretty good job with, like with like just calling stuff or warning people. And I think he did warn him, but at
Mhm.
that point it's, like cuz before the fight, he was like, "Yeah, I know about your opponent." Like cuz we were like, "Watch the elbow strikes cuz,
Yeah.
to the back of the head cuz it's, it's it's to me it is a fight, so you should be able to pretty much do whatever. But since it is a rule, like just you got to follow the few rules that there are.
Yeah.
So when that happened, yeah, he basically come out threw a front kick at me that I kind of like caught, like he hit me in like the face, but like I grabbed onto his leg and almost took him down right off it, right from the get go. He comes out like a maniac, and I almost take him down, and I get him up against the cage, and of course, I watched the Alon fight a bunch of times,
Mhm.
scouting him, and right away he starts elbowing me right in the back of the head, and I feel like four, five, six of them right in behind my head, and I was thinking right there, and like my like eyes were closed, trying to take him down. I'm like, dude, there's no way I'm letting this dude knock me out right now. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna fight until I die right here. Like because like I was so mad, it was like that. Like I felt like it was illegal, and I felt like he was doing the exact same thing that he did against Alon.
Mhm.
So like I just got pissed, and then like we start grappling. Like I'm like, dude, I'm just gonna try to go as hard as I can for the whole time, and it definitely put a pace on him, and I was able to grind out that win.
Yeah, I paced so hard that he just gets up with 10 seconds left in the round, tries to walk away,
Yeah,
and I'm like, "What is he doing?" And then, of course, you do exactly what you're supposed to do, which is punch him in his stupid face. And now another meme is created from your fights, which I love.
yeah. That's the funniest thing that's happened so far in my career for sure. I sometimes I see on like the Instagram like discovery page
Mhm.
where it'll be like some like Russian website, and it'll post like funny music with it, and everyone will be like doink, like oink, and like all these like weird like sounds, and yeah, it's all in Russian and stuff. It's pretty cool. And it's funny though, because if you only show that clip, it looks like it could be a dirty move,
Yeah.
like you're punching a guy when he's walking away. But if you know the context, especially like the elbows to the back of the head to start the fight,
Mhm.
and then it's I knew what was happening. Like he's trying to hit me, he's getting frustrated, he can't hit me, but he wants to act like, oh, I'm walking away, like this guy doesn't want to fight, I'm gonna walk away. But
Mhm.
he wasn't landing anything, and my plan at that point is just to wear him down anyway. So he
Yeah.
hears the 10 seconds and he gets up and he knows there's a little bit of time left. And I was like, I'm fine right now. Like, and I just popped right up and got him. So
Yeah.
I knew it was going to be a battle. And once I landed that, I was like, he bit off more than he could chew. The second and third round it's gonna be my rounds. And he really, after the first round, he didn't hit me with anything that like did any damage. He was really just like controlling me a little bit, but sometimes with that control, I was just bouncing elbows off his head, and like the next day both my elbows were just like swollen. I was like stuck like this. My whole body was banged up from that fight. It was definitely one of the rougher ones on my body that I was happy to do. What I was happy about.
Yeah, no, I definitely love that fight as well. And that fight and the next one started a trend, which I hopefully will stop following you because I'm trying to see you get paid. Is you have award worthy performances, but then they happen to be on a card with something just ridiculous happens. You're like, all right, well, Billy had it until that. You know what I mean? Like, I thought that was going to fight of the night. I thought the knockout was going to get performance of the night. And
I know.
unfortunately, both those cards had some just ridiculous performances on them.
Dude, me too. I've both right after both fights. Well, the Alpha Ginger fight, I got the win. I was super happy that I was able to get that because that was just like a ridiculous like a training camp where we were literally weren't allowed to go to the gym because there was like a
Hmm.
virus going around, like like it's like that was when COVID was like at its scariest point of
Yeah.
where things could have went. So that was just a ridiculous training camp. So just getting that win, I was happy. At the media though was like after we were talking to everyone, they're like, oh, what are you gonna do, with that 50 grand, if you get it. Like they
Hmm.
were acting like I legit just got fight of the night. So I was like, oh, cool, cool, cool. And I'm like, yeah, I would hope, I hope I get it, that'd be great. And then after, like, no, you didn't get it. But then they were like that the Brandon Rovelver's Tim Elliott card got it, and I was like, what? Like it was. I was like, what? Like we just watched that fight in like the hotel. Like that wasn't that good of a fight. So like I didn't get that one. And then the last one, yeah, I knock out Kyle Nelson with a a nasty one punch knockout after a dog fight,
Mhm.
and then that homeboy gets it that knocked out Kama Worthy, and I already
Uh,
knocked out Kama Worthy.
yeah. I remember the Kamo Worthy
Come
fight too
on,
because I
man.
watched that one when I was in Qatar. Me and I don't know if you remember him, Mike Shane, another guy I trained at GTS for a while.
Yeah,
We were
yeah,
both
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I
we're both
remember him.
deployed, and so it's oh man, what time is it? It was like 3 a.m. or something like that there, and we're watching that fight. I remember that Kamo Worthy knockout. That was a dope one too.
That was
So
wild. He was definitely my toughest fight up until that point,
yeah.
and my the game plan should have just been to take him down and beat him up, but I was like, "Oh man, he's knocking everyone out. Like I want to strike with him."
Hmm.
And I remember Arroyo, we're fighting, we're like moving around. I'm like he's tagging me up a little bit. I'm hitting him every now and then, but he was moving like quick. And Arroyo goes, "Billy, quit fucking around."
uh,
and
solid coaching
and
right there.
my brother Jim is like looking at me. He's like, yeah, dude. He's like, Arroyo made it sound like you were just like messing around, like you didn't want to take him down. And then I actually did take him down at one point in the second round, beat him up a little bit, and then the second round I knocked him out right away, right when the bell rang.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So
good times.
I got a bit of coaching advice for you. You can have this one for free.
Okay,
Take your last knockout and your fight. I think it was the V2 fights. You hit the guy with the overhand right, and then you
the
ended
Reynolds.
up. Yeah, I think so. The rear naked choke with no hooks in.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so and then take that punch and then the punch from your last fight and show what it does when your punch is clean because that 1-2 in your last fight was one of the cleanest ones I've ever seen, especially, in a real live third round fight, you know what I mean, when you're tired and exhausted and everything like that. It was just super clean. And then the one in that fight with Reynolds was a bit more of an overhand, kind of like
yeah.
a little bit more
Yep,
of a haymaker. And
yep,
one of them knocked the dude out and like looked like it broke his face. And the other
yeah,
one, of course, still dropped the dude. They're both good punches
yeah.
when you land, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, that's a lot of that has to do with the technique a little bit, but a
Mhm.
lot of it has to do with the strength and conditioning I've been doing, especially for that last fight, and I'm gonna turn it up even more for this next fight because going into the Kyle Nelson fight and even at the Alpha Ginger fight was the first fight at four. It was should have been. I should have made him do it at 45, but that was the first fight in a while where I felt like the dude was just way stronger than me
Mhm.
because during that pandemic I wasn't really like lifting a lot of weights, but
Yeah.
I was doing a lot of conditioning. So I was really well conditioned, but not a lot of like heavy weightlifting because the gyms were closed. So the Kyle Nelson fight, he was another guy who was like a big 45er.
Mhm.
I got after it like lifting weights at Driven, that place
Yeah.
right here in South Tampa. You see I'm posting there all the time. They put me through at least a couple sessions a week. I'm doing my sprints, I'm doing my other sessions. So doing all those conditioning sessions, that extra minute of rest that I got like in this last fight, I
Mhm.
was ready. Like that third round was just going to be like a bloodbath. Like I was ready just to go like ham for 3 minutes. So all that extra conditioning really helps me be able to land those harder punches in the later rounds. And of course, just throwing those punches hundreds of thousands of times. But yeah, that like loopy right hand, I was
Yeah.
throwing it a lot earlier in the fight. A lot of it depends on what they're doing with their hands.
Yeah.
Like if their hands are like tight together, I was able to land that over the top on Nelson a few times, but they were just good clean shots that like got in like around his hands. And I think that made him kind of open his hands up a little bit. And going into that third round, he was a little tired. And he had his hands open a little more. And sure enough, Rawlings was like right before Rawlings was like straighten up that right hand, or he said something like that. He's like straighten up
Yeah.
that right hand. I was like, okay, bet. And then like I went out there and like I was touching him. I was like, oh man, I just saw an opening. I just laced him.
Yeah. And for everybody listening to that's Crew Dan Rollins, Muay Thai
Yes.
aficionado, one of the best. Dude, that dude's shins are made of granite. It's
Dude,
ridiculous.
Crew Dan is one of the best striking coaches in the world. I've said it time and time again. He's always with me. He's been with me for about at least 15 fights, I would say.
Mhm.
Amateur and pro, like because he was with GTS for a while. He left for a while and then came back and replaced Parker, who's another
Yeah.
G. It's amazing having Parker. Parker's been back in Tampa too now.
Yep.
He basically did what opposite of you. He
Yeah.
came
Yeah.
this way
Yeah.
and he went that way.
I have that
Uh,
effect on people. They don't want to be around me. They move.
oh, Brandon's coming here. Nah, I'm going back.
Yeah. So
No,
I
I
want.
don't think you had anything to do with it.
No, no. His daughter finished college, so he will move back to
Yes.
Tampa. Yeah,
Yep.
but so I wanted to ask you, man, because I haven't touched base with you since then. But like, you did get diagnosed earlier this year with COVID, which usually you want to keep that private, but you're a UFC fighter,
Yep.
so everybody in the world found out about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they ended up canceling Fofola's fight with that for that. So one, how were your symptoms during that? Because it seemed like you were largely asymptomatic, and then also just how was that whole feeling? Not only knowing that you got COVID, but then you got Fofola's fight canceled. It was just crap on top of crap, you know?
Dude, it was terrible. It was so the symptoms weren't bad at all. So basically what happened was for those who don't know, I was gonna go out there to corner Matt Frevola in his UFC fight, and they COVID test everyone once they get there on site. And that was when was that? I think that was in July. It was like definitely like the peak of when everyone in Florida had it.
Mhm.
And yeah, I go out there, test positive. So they cancel Ferola's fight. They canceled Ferola's fight because we were in the same hotel room, and were with each other. So not only did they put me on the COVID list, they put Fervola on the COVID list too.
Yeah.
So he couldn't even fly back. He had to go on a road trip with me. We had to drive back from Vegas back to Tampa. So we drove from in one day we drove all the way to Tennessee, stayed at my buddy Matt Bunce's house, and then drove all the way from Bunce's back home to Tampa and got his fight canceled. I will say this though. I'm done apologizing about it, but I will say this: he did get paid a decent amount of money. He got his show money and his win money,
Mhm.
and he didn't even have to cut weight or fight. So yes, I am sorry about that. And poor Matt Fervola breaks his foot this last fight.
Yeah, yeah.
Has just had a really rough year, but he'll be all right. He's a tough dude, and yeah, that was super rough. I felt bad, really felt bad for Matt. And then speaking of Matt Arroyo, he basically had to tell everyone that I had COVID, and he said attendance dropped by like 50% the next like 3 weeks.
So you just costed everybody. No, that's great.
Yes.
No, I'm happy to hear that you obviously, man, that you made it through that and everything. I had my pretty good expectations, considering the physical
Mhm.
condition you're in, that you were going to make it out okay. But you never know with some of these things. So before I let you go, though, because I know you got to get out of here, there's a couple things I have to make sure that I answer for, so people don't call me being a punk or a hater. One, I've been talking crap about your hair and your facial hair and stuff like that. I've been team cut it off for sure. But
Okay.
I've told you that too. I'm pretty sure. But
Okay.
two, I've definitely told the story a couple of times. It's come up about the perforated eardrum and how much I still hate you for that.
The perfect eardrum. Okay. So first, let me address the first one, and this might be a nice little clip for you.
Mhm.
Um, I at this point my hair is just on its own. It's just like growing nonstop, and I don't know what to do with it because I have to flex on, especially like all like my older brothers and my family and all the bald people out there.
Mhm.
Like for some reason I am blessed to have just a lot of hair. It kind of grows kind of weird, but I still have a lot of hair. And I was getting it cleaned up from my barber for a while, and then he basically took like a little break from COVID. So I was like, dude, I'm just gonna let it grow. And so I let it grow, let the facial hair grow a little bit for this last fight, the Kyle Nelson fight.
Mhm.
And I got another fight coming up. Who knows? I got a lot to work with right now. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I was actually thinking tomorrow about doing something, but some people want me to grow it out, maybe like a Uriah Faber style,
Mhm.
cornrows. But I'll do something different for it. If anyone has any ideas, let me know.
I'll pay for you to get cornrows for sure, man.
If I could get, it seems like they're harder to grow than you think.
No,
Like or like longer. Like it's a lot
yeah.
of hair. You have to have a lot of hair, I guess.
Yeah, well, I'm bald now, so this isn't useful information for you. But I used to have cornrows, so I'm very aware of what it takes to
Okay.
get them. And it's for me because I have a sensitive scalp, I guess, or whatever. Painful as crap. It was like sitting in a chair getting tortured for an hour, but it's all right. You'll be all right.
But no,
But
no, I don't mean I don't mean like
no,
they're
you're
gonna be
talking about
like
just the length, right, or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like,
Yeah.
okay, hold on a second, check me out.
Oh god, it's terrible.
I mean, dude, I do got a good head of hair.
Hey
It's
man,
like long and wild.
look, man, I can't tell you anything. You're knocking dudes out with this Samson hair, so you do what you got to do.
Dude, you know how I knew things were bad? This dude hit me up in my Instagram DMs and he goes, "Hey man," he's like, "if you need a barber, I'll give you the first haircut on me." And I'm like, "Oh, thanks man. I'll let you know."
So, so just to, you don't
Uh,
have to talk too much about it, but you can confirm that perforated eardrums that I'm not being a celebrity hoe who's trying to make myself more connected. We were sparring. I don't remember. One of us was probably getting ready to fight. Probably you, more likely than not. And there was just I think a left, my left. No, it would have been your right. A right, like a little right hook, perfectly cupped my ear. And all of a sudden, I just remember
oof.
going timeout in the middle of the fight because I was like, "Wait, everything's super loud right now. Something ain't right."
Dude, I'm sorry about that, man. You're not the first person to like, cuz I vaguely remember that. Like I do
Mm.
remember, like, you making jokes about it and me feeling, saying I'm sorry. But
Not
you're
meaning
not.
it.
I remember there's been other people. I remember there was someone, I forgot who it was, and they, cuz we have so many training partners. When I'm getting
Yeah.
ready for fights, all we're doing is, like, sparring like crazy and not eating a lot of food and stuff. And he comes up to me and I'm like, "Yo, what's up, man?" And I forgot who it was, but they came up to me and like, "Yo, man, how you doing?" I'm like, "Yo, man," and I looked at him and I'm like, "I haven't seen him in a while." I'm like, "Yo, man, where have you been?" And they looked at me and they're like, "You serious?" And I'm like, "No, man, what?" He's like, "You messed up my knee like 6 months ago." They're like, "We were sparring and they're like, you picked up and slammed me, and they're like I've been out for 6 months because my knee's been all jacked up." And I'm like, "Oh, my bad, dude." I'm like,
Uh,
"Dude, my bad, man." I'm like, "I had no idea."
that's awesome.
Yeah, and like they were just coming back, and like I had no idea. Like they didn't tell me or anything.
No,
I forgot who it was though. I think it was someone who still trains. I don't remember, but it was just, and like I was like, "Oh man, my bad." Like back to work. Like when I'm there, like I'm getting my reps in and getting my, I'm never like violently trying to hurt people, but
no,
sometimes it gets a little rough, and
no. And
that's how it kind of has to be.
yeah, and dude, it wasn't like a hard punch; it just perfectly landed everything. And I'm not actually salty about it. It's just funny
I know.
story. But like again, you like
Yeah.
you're talking about because where I've been to gyms where they try to hurt you, man. I've
Mm.
been to a couple here in Miami. I was telling the story about when I was talking, I think to Luis or Mikey Conlon. I don't remember, but yeah, dude, I've been to plenty of gyms where they try to hurt you. And that is not GTS whatsoever. In fact, if you hurt people, there, Matt doesn't like anybody messing with his money. You have to get out of there.
No. Yo, he got a little upset with me running the amateur sparring. We had a couple incidences where like it was like 2 weeks in a row. Like the one week, someone was just like bleeding all over the place, and they cleaned it, but it was like there was still
Mhm.
like blood everywhere. And then like the next week, someone like threw someone against the wall and they like twisted their leg and their ankle like just snapped and they had
Oh,
a like a severely broken ankle. And Arroyo got like, he was like, "Dude, you gotta start like making sure certain people can't spar. Like it's got to be like a higher level group."
yeah, yeah. No. So, all right,
So
last question, man. Before I let
okay.
you go, how different is it for you, let's say fear level wise or just experience wise in general, fighting in the UFC versus any of the other fights you've had? Does it just feel different, or just, I mean, you've been doing it so long now, it's basically the same, and with win intensity and everything else, you know?
Yeah, well, it's the last two fights have both been at the UFC Apex, and they've both felt, and they've all, even the Kilborn fight in front of everyone in DC.
Hmm.
I just feel like everything, all this crazy stuff happens like up to fight week, and you're promoting it and doing this and that. Like you do way more for it before the fight, and then the second I walk in the cage now, like I take a step in the cage and I start moving around, and it just feels like this thing happens where it's like, all right, it's time to fight now. And I look at the guy and I kind of have this feeling like I know like shit's about to go down, but it's the same feeling every time now. Like it's the same feeling that, like, it's just like a lesser version of like the last time, because like each fight you get like a little more and more comfortable, in there. And I think when the fans come back, I think that's when I'm really gonna excel. Like I think I'm gonna have a lot of crazy energy in that fight. But in the meantime, like with like the smaller crowds, I think it's a little more like tactical and more I don't know, like a just definitely a different type of environment.
Gotcha. Yeah, definitely a little bit more focused and able to really, especially because of the way Matt yells, so you can hear a lot
Yeah,
more.
you can hear him a lot, and it's almost like obviously you see the cameras and I'm conscious that it's on ESPN or ESPN Plus or
Hmm.
maybe a pay-per-view in the near future, and I'm conscious of that, but there's only a few people in the crowd, and you look down, it says UFC, but then like ding ding ding, and it's all quiet, and it's like almost like you're sparring, but it's almost like you're sparring against someone that is, is trying to knock you out.
Yeah.
Like you're moving around and you're like, there's not a
Hmm.
lot of people here, but like this dude's trying to knock me out.
Yeah, exactly. All right, boss.
you
I'm not
know,
gonna hold you up, man. I know
okay,
you got to get to that chiropractor. So appreciate this, brother,
dude,
man. Always love talking to you. We got to catch up more often. I know that's more my fault than yours. So I'll be in touch.
dude, no worries at all, man. Let's do it.
All right, take it easy, boss.
All right, later, bro.
Thanks for checking out today's episode. Make sure that you like and subscribe to catch more starting nowhere.